Hi and welcome to the first ever SGS Podcast this side of the universe. I will be your host, Samuel Mork Bednarz, but you can call me Sam because words. This is the show where we'll gather together and talk about literature and stuff. Yes, ma'am, please calm yourself. I know. But, we might talk about serious things or casual things. But as of right now, though, this is like the first pilot episode, so we will mostly just be me talking to myself. Story of my life. But yeah, let's move on. For those of you who haven't heard about SGS, the SGS, or like Southgate Society as it stands for, is a school in Denmark that's dedicated towards authors and making writers and these kind of stuff. You can get a degree in popular literature amongst other things. So it's mainly about writing and stuff, and this podcast is made through the school. I am a student at SGS. Been so for a semester now, so this is going places, people. But yeah, and today I want to talk about a rather interesting topic. I want to talk about what makes a character interesting, right? It's something that I've been thinking about lately, particularly. And I think it applies even, everything in literature somehow applies to real life, but, you can think about this same issue in terms of, what makes a person interesting in your life, even, like what makes you drawn towards a person, or what makes people drawn towards you, like what is special about you, and, but I really think, we can there's no right or wrong answers in anything, especially when it comes to literature or how to write. It's just, even when you start talking about guidelines, what you're really talking about is how to write for other people, because that's mainly what we want to do with writing and communicating in any sort of way. It's pointless if you have an idea and it's just in your head. The entire point of communicating and writing is to get the thing that you have in your head in a physical format that you can show to other people, right? If it wasn't to share with other people, then why are you writing it? You might as well just have it in your head then. But so I think the main question we're asking when we're asking how to make a good character is how do we make characters that will be attractive to people, right? To other people outside of our own heads, right? How do we write for the people in our community or the people around us? And what do our readers think is interesting? And I'm not advertising you sell your soul to some commercial idea, but we all want to understand how people think and how to best utilize that to bring our message across, right? So I think that's an important thing about this entire thing, is just learning how other people think, and I think an interesting character, is interesting in maybe he's special. Maybe he, like right now I'm wearing a fox suit, right? That makes me stand out in a way. And so that will instantly be noticeable, even from a distance. People might be interested in that, and also characters that are layered, characters that have not just one personality trait, but that have layers of personality traits, and and people that aren't so easily rounded up in just a single paragraph. You can continue learning more about this person. It's like a real person, right? You want to make them feel three-dimensional and not flat. That's the thing. But what I really think it all comes down to, when it comes to making interesting characters, more so than anything else, is impact. I think a interesting character is an active character, not necessarily active in the way that they exercise a lot. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying characters that impact the scene in some way. I think this is generally because I think you could probably make, if you know what you're doing, you could probably even make a character that had just no layers and was just completely bland and uninteresting when you looked at the person. But they might still be very, very interesting just for the mere fact that whenever they are in the scene, they radically alter the scene, right? You can imagine some sort of a, if you look at Monsters Inc. I don't know what she's called. The Slug Girl, right? I mean, she's not. You just look at her. She's not necessarily interesting. She's the boss person, right? And she. Maybe she is layered in some way, but imagine that she wasn't. Right? Imagine that this boss character is just everything that she is. There's nothing more to her at all. She might still be interesting just for the fact that whenever she is in the scene will be very different than it would be when she wasn't there, right? She's not irrelevant to the scene. She will always have an impact on the story when she is in the scenes. Like, she might say, no, we can't do that because we have to follow protocol or whatever, and then the character has to do something about that, and she might actively go and block the way of the main character because she wants things to be done in this exact way. And in that way, even though she isn't visually interesting and even though she isn't necessarily layered in any way, she will become very very important to the story just for the mere fact that she impacts it in such a great way, right? A boring character, I think most of the time, what makes a boring character is a character that you feel like it doesn't really matter if they're there or if they're not, because the scene would still be exactly the same. And that's quite literally what makes an irrelevant character, right? It seems like when you're saying it out loud like this, it seems like the most obvious thing ever. A character will be boring if they don't make any sort of advance on the story, they don't alter it in any way, and their presence doesn't really matter at all. They're just there. But there's still, I don't want to go out and bash everyone, because we all have that learning curve. I've read some of my older stuff. I'm not proud of it, but I do see a lot of people that even sometimes their main characters are they feel completely irrelevant, right? They're just there, right? It feels more like they are a victim of the story, right? The victim, the story is happening around them rather than them leading on the story. They are not creating the story is just happening, and then they just happen to be there observing it, And maybe there's some exception to this, there always is, but I think in general, if you want to make an interesting character, you have to make a character that will, that has some impact on the scene, and that will make the scene particularly different or special because of his or her presence, right? She will make the scene in a way, and you can see this behavior also with some of the most like the most beloved characters in cinema, even with take for instance the Joker, like Heath Ledger and all this, he has a very big impact on the scene. When he is in the scene will be formed by him. Like, he owns the scene whenever he is there, right? There's no way you can ignore the Joker when he is in the scene. He will do things, and he will say things, and he will act in ways that will make everything different, right? He has such a big impact on the scene when he is there, and that, I think, is the main core reason of why he has become such a big culture icon, and he has become so interesting, and and a lot of people feel very passionately about this character because of the way that he so radically impacts the story. And I think this goes for a lot of characters, like even Jack Sparrow of the Caribbeans, right? He's not, he always has his own interests and stuff, and you could argue all night about how layered these characters are, but at the end of the day, he really, the end point is that when he is in the scene will be different than if he wasn't in the scene. He brings something to the scene that only he could bring, right? He makes a scene that he is not a victim of the scene by any measure of that terminology, whatever that even really means, but he shapes the scene. And I think that that is the main core of what makes a character interesting. And I think if you can understand that one core concept, then you can make characters that are very, very, very interesting, almost regardless. I think it's always a matter of doing something with that. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about with that, and I also want to talk about how that applies to real life, really, because I think this is also something that I want to keep doing, how to not just talk about stories or movies and how to make a plot or characters, but how you can see the relevance to real life, because that is what we're doing with the story. We are imagining a alternate version of real life, and because of that, it's inevitable that we will have some very strong correlation to what is in your real life and what is in a story, and everything that is in a story can somehow be paralleled or referenced in how we think and act and whatever we have experienced in real life. And I think if you really think about it, what is a person that you feel like this person is interesting, right? Everyone here is interested in learning about that. What makes a person interesting to me? Because if you can learn that, then you can also learn how to be interesting to other people. And we all want to be interesting to other people. There's no point in even lying about it. We all do. It's just we are social human beings. Human beings are hyper social, and we want relations. Even there's a study recently. I can't entirely recite who made the study or what the study is called, though. I could probably look that up if I really bothered to. But I do remember that there's this study that they made that asked a bunch of people what was the most important thing in their life, and what they generally came out with of the study is that it seems like the thing that it makes you the most happy is relations, right? It's relations with other people. And so how we think a lot about that, then how do we invite other people into our lives, and how do we perceive our other people, and how do other people perceive us? There's also this other very interesting thing that people tend to say. Boys tend to say that girls always are into bad bad guys. I think this is it has something to do with jealousy in a way. We tend to think that when this person that we really likes someone else, we tend to think why do they like this guy? He's an asshole. I'm a good guy. Why don't you like me? But I think actually, to be honest, also this goes both ways. People tend to say that girls are into bad boys, but then all the rap songs are about guys being into bad girls. So this is not by any means a one-sided issue like some people like to claim that it is. But I think the interesting part here is that I do think actually there is some correlation of being interested in people who might be a little bit of an asshole. But I think the interesting part here is not necessarily that we are into assholes or people who act very badly. I think it's mainly because of the reason that people who are assholes tend to be assholes in a way that they disregard other people, right? They don't think too much about how what they're doing is going to impact people around them. And because of that, they will make a lot of action, right? Someone who spends a lot of time, like a quote-unquote good guy, spends a lot of time thinking about how what he does will impact the people around him, and it might do so to the point of enabling action, right? And that makes him boring. I'm sorry, good guys. I consider myself a good guy, and maybe that's narcissistic to say, but, I did completely fail at the social relations game for probably most of my life, right? I was not social by any means, and I basically just didn't talk to anyone. But I'm not, I just want to say I'm not criticizing other people. I'm mostly criticizing myself at this point. But I do think that what makes a person interesting is their capacity to be important in the environment, right? To be to go out and say what you mean and what you think, and to do what you mean and what you think, and to make actions that people around you feel like shape. We've all been in a classroom, right? We all know that, and we all know that one fun one loves, and we know that because whenever he is in the room, he owns the room, right? Everyone is paying attention to him because he is making actions, and because he is speaking out loud, and he's making actions that will shape. And some people might even hate him, right? Some people will hate him, maybe because the things that he is doing out loud and saying out loud might be negative. But I do think we will all feel some form of significance towards him, right? We will feel something about him because he is so active, and because he is so up in arms, and so he shapes the scene, right? He might be an asshole, but he does shape the scene, and that makes him interesting regardless of whether or not you like the guy or not, right? And I do think that is also why assholes tend to come in situations that nice people might feel like, how did that happen? Why would that happen that way? But I do, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying. But I think there's a lot of things to think about that, and I think the main thing to take away from it is that you don't have to be an asshole, right? Because it's not about that. It seems like it's about that because people who are assholes tend to be more likely to engage in action, right? Because they don't think too much about the consequences of their actions. But that also tells me that people who do think about their actions could also be very interesting, and maybe even more interesting, I feel, because it's just a matter of being able to go up and take action. And since you are a person that thinks a lot about your actions as well, you might even go up and take actions that are good actions, and actions that people might say, not only is that an interesting guy, but he's also a very nice guy. Like, he's a very cool guy. And people like that, I think, have the upper hand in pretty much everything. So that's what I would take away from this. Not just, it's not to be afraid to shape the scene, right? To own the scene, not just when you write your characters, but when you are a character in a scene. And of course, this is not applicable to everyone. Some people might just be very happy with not having to shape the scene as a character. I know a lot of people around in the literary environment as introverts, me included. I am a big introvert, but personally speaking, I've been more extroverted in the last few years than I'm used to at all. I've been growing a lot in that aspect, and I think we all grow throughout life, so there's no safe way to saying that I will always be like this. And I don't think any of us should be that, but it's also okay to be introverted. We don't all have to be like the light of the party, but when you think about a person that you want to a person that is important to you, maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be like someone that you're trying to impress necessarily. It can be someone that's already in your life. I think if you just want to make an impression on someone, you should go out and you should take lead in a way, right? You should be the one that takes the lead, and you should go out and say, for instance, let's go on an adventure. Let's take the car and let's drive up to like Hubla, whatever. But the fact that you took control and made a decision, and now this other person is kind of like following along, it will make you more interesting just for the fact that you are shaping a story for this person, right? You have now become the leader in the story, in a way. So yeah, I mean, there's so many things that could be said about this, and I'm sure I'm completely wrong about a lot of things, and I always am, but I try my best, and all these ideas are in development. But I think we can have some really interesting discussions about it. If we just open up and are honest with ourselves and with each other, we can really not just figure out ourselves and who we are and how to act, but I think understanding who we are and how we act and how others act and how others are is very much a key ingredient to making a good story, because you have to understand people in order to write about people, right? That's what I think anyway. So yeah, thank you for listening. It's been great. We will try to put out some content every week. This is the first episode, so we'll see how this all works out, and I'm going to start editing now, and I'll learn a lot about how that process is going to be for me. So you'll expect to get more information in the next 2 weeks if you want to tune in and keep track. Thank you all for listening, and don't forget to eat your pancakes or some shit like that.
I would like to introduce